the studios, there is one instructor who is talking to 500 different training centers. And please mind you, we are not talking about a one-way transmission. This is virtual training where every student can ask a question back, and the travel time of that question to the instructor is only 2 seconds. So by the time you blink your eye, or by the time you say Jack Robinson, the question is reached the instructor. And by the time he says Jack Robinson, the answer is back there. So virtually all that we're trying to do is, instead of flesh and blood, we're having a screen. And there's this guy who's talking. And believe me, it's been successful. One of the companies got listed a couple of years back, is today the leader in that space. And this is going to take a viral, viral proposition. And you will see a lot of good instructors being in high demand, because replicating instructors, as much as Africa has a problem of teachers, India equally has a problem of teachers. However, we have used IT in a big way, technology intervention in a big way. The last point that I want to make on this particular aspect is, the biggest problem in the job, in the training and education space is, ultimately there is no causality attached to it. How do you define causality in a vocational training program? Are you telling me a student is going to learn something because he loves that topic? The answer is a loud no. A student would go for that particular course because at the end of the day, his aspiration is that there is a causality attached, which is in the form of a job. And all that in India, in a very few small baby steps, what we have taken is addressing that causality as a part of the challenge. And today, every training company is trying to take a proposition of having a strong staffing arm attached along with it. There are also propositions, like one of the companies that we are investing is going to get into a model where we will tell, you come, you enroll, you pay only after you get a job. That's putting your money where your mouth is. So these are new training models, business models that are all getting evolved with time. I'm not saying this all is going to work. There would be some mistakes that will further make. Given the advantage of being a little on a lag side, it may be advantageous to just pick up some things from that learning curve and implement for a better future. This is just a slide about what we do. And the reason is because there are many companies like us. The idea is not to talk about Scholar Point. The idea is to talk companies like Scholar Point. What we do typically is we invest in companies. Okay? And I'm not telling we are a private equity. We are operating and a managing private equity. So what we typically do is we invest in businesses which are focused on education and training. And it can be anywhere in the world, so long as it is India, it is Africa, or it's Middle East. So our boundaries are defined. Any place in Africa which suits the whole ecosystem, we go and invest. We have done some good work in the past. We continue to look forward to the investments that we would like to make. Those are generally in the form of companies which are already operating. We bring in investments in the form of hard money, in the form of content, in the form of technology, in the form of experience, in the form of people, and together try and scale that ecosystem to a totally different level. So the idea is we have seen some large enterprises here. We translate that vision from here into that economy. So that's something that we do, besides, of course, having an intensive focus on India. One of the other aspects that we are also doing is setting up a university, and this is very interesting. Personally, my conviction on Africa, and I'm not saying this to flatter any of my friends sitting here. You could ask me even if I'm talking in an Arab conference, and you would find me talking the same thing. The reason is because we see an extremely high level of traffic getting deployed into India. So we are building one of India's perhaps modern private university. There are some startling differentiators that we want to bring to the table, and you will all hear about it sooner than later. If Madam Sunanda connects me to all of you all, I'd be very happy to send you all details as and when we set it up. We are creating a complete separate wing which will have focus only on African students. And we want to make it affordable. We want to make it accessible. And most importantly, we want to make it job-enabled. We are seeing the way India is. We are seeing a lot of Americans coming to India to work now. Please don't consider me arrogant, but that's going to be the future, right? Likewise, we see, I don't know about Chinese, I can't say, right? But we certainly know about our friends from US, our friends from Africa, and the trend is already starting in a small way. What we also want to do is tag it along with jobs, not necessarily in our economy. As we say, the world is only getting thinner on geography. The idea is to build something which actually translates knowledge, which is what we call as operational first hour. When the guy steps into the office, he should be productive to start the work go, as compared to, again, his boss complaining that this guy is dud. So those are those aspirations that we have. We're setting up a private university with a separate focus and a complete focus on Africa. And so it'll have an Indian wing, and it'll have an African wing. African wing would have students only from Africa, and other students would not be allowed there. So that's the kind of an ecosystem that we are trying to build. Besides, as we speak, we have some of the leading brands in the BFSI space, in the telecom space, in the IT space. Should any of you all want any kind of vocational assistance in whatever level of collaboration? It could be we investing in your country. It could be we providing you brand collaborations. It could be we providing you content collaborations, or whatever form. Whatever form that one can look at in terms of creating and building an ecosystem which helps individual economies grow. I'm sure it can be a winning proposition for both sides. So the way we look at it is that there is a high potential, high leverage possible for collaborations. If we can collaborate, okay, it's going to be, in our opinion, a winning proposition. And those collaborations need not be historically the way it has been. The beauty of today's economy is that flexibility has become the key, and everyone is willing to bend themselves so long as it's going to create value for all the stakeholders involved. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer. Before I sign off, thank you everyone for the patient hearing. In case there are any questions, I'd be happy to take it even offline. Thank you, Madam Sunanda. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak here. And I hope I kept my promise of winding up within 30 minutes. Thank you so much. Yes, gentlemen. I can. Sure. Thank you so much. I'll do that. Yes, gentlemen. Okay, I think you have a very fair point there. The whole idea is, yes, you're right in many ways. When we look at the business and the ecosystem from our standpoint, we would rather take up a focused approach as compared to a diverse approach. So instead of addressing probably 50 countries, which would equally have the potential, I don't know, I would rather look at countries which are more invitational. So at the moment, our ecosystems within Africa, our popularity in some form, our engagements with different governments, all of it allows us the leg room and the elbow room to get the students from there. And also it's a question of where do we see we give the increased value for the money. We feel that can be better translated to Africa as an economy, where the need perhaps could be a little higher as compared to some of those developed economies where the need perhaps may not be as high. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
At that time, within that period, Africa's population will not have the sufficient carrying capacity to absorb all that population, even if you educate them specifically for the African market.
Correct.
Therefore, to the extent that the reality is known, the solution fails because you're trying to create an African worker when we in Africa are interested in putting people play in the global market.
Yeah, point taken. So, sorry.
Interested in producing global citizens rather than villages.
Correct. So, yeah. So I have 2 points to say there. One, there is a roof going to be attached to that. So when I'm talking about a university that we are setting, okay, and from our perspective, it's going to have a roof which is defined to perhaps probably about 5,000 students or at best 8,000 students. So we can't handle the whole the whole spectrum of the demand that can come in from one continent. Because as I said earlier, India in itself is going to be having a huge demand being thrown up. Then the second question would be from a management bandwidth perspective, how much can one scale? We would like to believe that we would set up scaling facilities which can hopefully multiply. But from an ecosystem perspective, we are not saying that we are going to be an alternative destination which is without a roof. There's going to be a roof attached to it, point number one. Number two, on the global citizen part of it, the idea is, I fully agree to your point about global citizenship. The idea is notwithstanding whether the student learns in Africa or whether the student learns in India or a student learns in say, US. Let's have a common parameter of evaluation and let all the students, notwithstanding the geographical stand that they take, reach to that point of level where they are not a villager, they are a global citizen. That's the attempt and that's the intent. How far we travel is perhaps a execution capability question. Correct.
Now, you are telling me you create a university where you'll have one wing for Indians, you'll have one wing for Africans, so they come, they go to the university, they get out of the university without understanding what India is, and without the Indians benefiting from that inter sharing experiences, getting a cultural fusion, okay, as they seek
Correct.
intellectual fulfillment.
No, that's a very good point.
Barriers, and you're telling me you're trying to make Africa better?
Okay. So,
And I don't want to make this, a long discussion.
right.
It is your product. You will develop it, you put it. Maybe some people don't buy it.
Correct.
But logically, if it is a discussion here, I think any educational institution built on separation, okay, creates a negativity that
Okay. I think I take your point. I think I have not articulated the larger proposition within that. The only point I want to make is that there is what we call as a twinning model that we're going to follow. So when I spoke about a separate infrastructure, I didn't mean about geographical separation of they being in a different wing. What I spoke about is the management mindset of having a focus which is totally on African students to get them to India. So I didn't mean to say that there's going to be one building which is going to be focused on Africans and one building. Yeah. So we are presuming that's a job largely done by automation of a mixer grinder. The outcome will be largely dependent on the quality of the tomato. If I have to take the example of what you're saying, and most importantly, the point I was trying to say is that the twinning was in terms of cultural diversity is getting narrowed. The twinning in terms of learning the same content. So notwithstanding whether the tomato comes from India or Africa or from China, the quality of the tomato will determine what the juice is, and the manual labor that goes into it, notwithstanding whether it's an African, Indian, Chinese, American, or an Australian, would remain the same. So that's the benchmark that I was attempting to try and convey. Pardon me if I have come across to say that this was a physical infrastructure. I didn't mean to say that, so I stand corrected. It is not a physical infrastructure. All that I spoke about was the intent of a clustering that we'll have in our mind of a focus that we have on Africa as a market. That was the point I was trying to make. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I'll be happy to take. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
I say that our models definitely did look like goddesses right here on stage. That was truly, truly outstanding and spectacular for all of us to see. And on that note, well, it's time for Africa, we do know that, but it's also time for us to take this opportunity this evening to thank our rest of our sponsors and supporters who have made Eye for Africa 2011 such a grand success. So if I may please request Mr. Y.P. Trivedi and Mr. R.A. Goenka to please join me back on stage and do us the honors of felicitating our sponsors and supporters. Invite Mr. Kushrab Jaiswal from Karox Technologies Limited. Started in 1992, Karox Technologies Limited is India's leading ISO certified IT education provider, known as a one-stop training shop. It has trained over 250,000 professionals across 19 locations. Let's hear it up for Karox Technologies Limited, please.